Marriage is supposed to mean love, trust, and partnership. But what happens when someone uses those vows as a weapon? He leaned back in his chair, smirked like he'd already won, and said something that still makes my stomach turn years later. What's yours is mine. That's what marriage means. Not as a joke. Not during an argument. But while casually maxing out my credit cards, draining my savings, and rewriting my life without my consent. I remember staring at him, waiting for him to laugh. Waiting for him to say he was kidding. He didn't, and in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't his wife. I was his resource. Speech balloon question for you. Answer in comments. Do you believe marriage means shared ownership or shared respect? And where do you draw the line when ours becomes abuse? 1. The man I married, I didn't marry a villain. That's the part people never understand when I tell this story. If he had been cruel from the beginning, if there had been red flags waving like sirens, I would have run. I was smart. Independent. Careful. I'd built my life with intention, my career, my savings, my boundaries, and he respected all of it. At least, that's what I thought. We met at a mutual friend's dinner party. He was charming without being loud, confident without being arrogant. When people talked over me, he leaned in and asked what I thought. When I mentioned my job, he didn't make it a competition. He said he admired my ambition. Looking back now, I realize he was studying me, not admiring me, but at the time, it felt safe. We dated slowly. No rushing. No pressure. He paid for dinners but never made a show of it. When I insisted on splitting bills, he smiled and said, "I like a woman who can stand on her own." I didn't know that sentence would later be used against me. When he proposed, it wasn't flashy. Just us, a quiet evening, him saying he wanted to build a life together. Equal. Shared. Balanced, and I believed him. After the wedding, little things began to shift, so subtle I almost missed them. He started asking more questions about my finances. Not demanding. Just curious. How much do you usually save each month? Do you still have that emergency fund? Wow, you're really good with money. I thought he was impressed. Then came the comments, since we're married now, we should stop thinking in mine and yours, don't you think? Marriage means sharing everything. That sounded reasonable. Romantic, even. So when he suggested we combine accounts, I hesitated, but I agreed that decision would cost me everything. At first, nothing changed. My paycheck still went in. Bills still got paid. Life went on until one afternoon, I opened our banking app and felt my chest tighten. Thousands gone, not stolen. Not hacked, spent. When I asked him about it, he didn't apologize. He didn't even look embarrassed. He shrugged. Relax. It's our money. That was the first time I felt fear, not loud fear, but quiet, creeping dread, because something in his eyes told me this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a declaration. Point 2. The credit cards started screaming. The first call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because Tuesdays were usually quiet, no meetings, no chaos, just background noise while I worked. My phone buzzed on the desk, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. I almost ignored it. Hello? I answered, half distracted. Hi, this is Amanda from Capital One. I'm calling regarding an unusual charge pattern on your account. My fingers froze above the keyboard. Unusual charge pattern. She read the number out loud. My credit card. My card. The one I'd had since my early 20s, the one I used carefully, the one I paid off every month like clockwork. There have been several large transactions in the past 48 hours, she continued. We just want to confirm they were authorized. The room felt suddenly smaller. I asked her to read them out. Electronics store. High-end watch retailer. Luxury hotel booking, non-refundable thousands of dollars. I didn't recognize a single purchase. My first thought wasn't he stole from me. It was there must be a mistake. I told her no. No, those charges weren't mine. My voice shook as I said it, like speaking the words might make them real. She paused. Then gently asked, do you share this card with anyone else? A spouse, perhaps? I swallowed. Yes. My husband. There was another pause. A longer one this time. Well, she said carefully, the charges were made using the physical card. With the correct PIN. I hung up after freezing the card, my hands trembling so badly I had to sit down. I stared at the wall, trying to breathe. He had the card. He had the PIN. He had never asked. When he came home that evening, I was already waiting. The kitchen lights were on, dinner untouched, my phone sitting between us like evidence. He glanced at it, then at me. What's wrong? He asked casually, Kicking off his shoes, did you use my credit card? I said. No greeting. No small talk. Straight to the point. He smiled, not nervously. Not apologetically amused. Yeah, he said. Why? That smile, that was the moment something cracked inside me. Why? I repeated. Because it's maxed out. He laughed. Actually laughed, like I just told him a funny story. Relax, he said, walking past me toward the fridge. I'll pay it back. With what money? I asked. He shrugged, pulling out a soda. Money's money. I stood up. You didn't ask. He finally looked at me then, really looked. And that's when his expression changed, not angry, not defensive, superior. Why would I need to? He said, we're married. I felt my chest tighten. That doesn't mean, he cut me off, his voice calm but sharp. What's yours is mine. That's what marriage means. There it was, the sneer, not loud. Not aggressive. Just confident. Certain, like he'd been waiting to say it. I stared at him, searching his face for some sign this was a misunderstanding, some hint of irony or exaggeration. There was none. You don't get to just take my money, I said quietly. He tilted his head. Your money? He repeated, amused. I thought you believed in equality. That word, equality, twisted into something ugly. I tried to explain. Tried to reason. I talked about boundaries, about communication, about respect. I reminded him how hard I'd worked to build my credit, how carefully I managed my finances. He listened patiently, too patiently, then he said, you're overreacting. That sentence became his favorite. Every time I protested, every time I questioned a purchase, every time I asked him to slow down, he used it like a shield. You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. Why are you making money such a big issue? But the charges didn't stop. They multiplied. New cards. New limits. New excuses. He started opening accounts in our names, at least, that's how he framed it. Joint responsibility. Joint future. I didn't find out until the letters started arriving. Congratulations on your new account. Your credit limit has been approved. I opened them with a growing sense of dread, my name printed neatly next to his. I confronted him again, my voice breaking this time. You're ruining my credit. He sighed dramatically, like I was exhausting him. Credit can be rebuilt. Trust matters more. Trust. The irony almost made me laugh. One night, after another argument, I locked myself in the bathroom and checked my credit score. I wish I hadn't. It had dropped nearly 100 points. I slid down against the door, the cold tile pressing into my back, my hands shaking as reality finally settled in. This wasn't careless spending, this was control. He wasn't bad with money. He was strategic. The worse my credit got, the more dependent I became. The fewer options I had, the more power he gained, and he knew it. When I accused him of that, he didn't deny it. He smiled again. You're my wife, he said softly. Why would you need options? That night, lying beside him in bed, listening to his breathing, I realized something terrifying. The man I married believed marriage gave him ownership, and ownership, once claimed, is never given up willingly. Speech balloon question for you. If your partner secretly opened credit accounts in your name, would you see it as betrayal or abuse? Tell me in the comments. Point 3. You're overreacting. The scariest part wasn't the spending. It was how quickly he made me doubt my own reality. After the credit card fight, I told myself things would change. That now that I'd confronted him, now that the problem was out in the open, he'd pull back. Apologize. At least pretend to care. Instead, he shifted tactics. He became calm. Reasonable. Almost gentle, and that's when the gaslighting began. The next morning, he made coffee like nothing had happened. Kissed my forehead. Asked how I slept. When I hesitated, still raw from the night before, he frowned, not angrily, but with concern. You're still upset? He asked softly. About money? I nodded. Yes. Of course I am. He sighed, pulling out a chair across from me. I hate seeing you like this, he said. So stressed. It's not healthy. Something about the way he said it made my stomach turn. I wouldn't be stressed if you didn't. He raised his hand gently. See? This is what I mean. You're spiraling. Spiraling, that word lodged itself into my chest. He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. You've always been a little intense about control. Remember when we were dating? You hated surprises. You tracked every dollar. I stared at him. That's called being responsible. Or anxious, he countered smoothly. Not everything has to be a crisis. By the end of the conversation, I felt confused. Not convinced, but unsteady, and that was his goal over the next few weeks. He perfected it. Every concern I raised was reframed as a flaw in me. If I questioned a purchase, I was obsessive. If I asked for transparency, I was paranoid. If I cried, I was emotionally unstable. Once, after I confronted him about a new credit line I'd never authorized, he shook his head and said, "You know, my ex used to do this too. Blow things out of proportion." That hurt more than I expected. You're comparing me to your ex now? I asked. I'm just noticing patterns, he replied calmly. Common denominator. I stopped talking after that, not because I agreed, but because I didn't trust myself to speak anymore. He started involving other people. It was subtle at first. Comments made in front of friends. She handles the finances, he'd say with a chuckle. Very tightly. Ask her before you spend $1, he joked once, and everyone laughed. I forced a smile while something inside me twisted. Later, when I confronted him, he looked genuinely surprised. I was joking, he said. God, you're sensitive. Sensitive, another label added to the list. Then came his family. His mother called one evening, her voice sweet but firm. He tells me you've been stressed lately, honey. You need to let go a little. Marriage is about trust. Trust, that word again. I wanted to scream. Instead, I apologized. I apologized for being stressed. For overthinking. For making things harder than they needed to be. The more I apologized, the more confident he became. One night, I overheard him on the phone in the other room. She's just not good with change, he said. Always needs control. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding. He was rewriting me, and worse, people were believing him. I started second-guessing everything. Was I too rigid? Too emotional? Too dramatic? I began keeping notes in my phone, dates, amounts, conversations, because my memory felt unreliable. Every time I confronted him, he denied saying things I knew he'd said. I never said that. You misunderstood. You're remembering it wrong. Once, after a particularly heated argument, he looked at me with something close to pity. Have you ever talked to someone? He asked. A therapist, maybe? I felt my face burn. Are you saying I'm crazy? I'm saying you might be overwhelmed, he replied smoothly. There's no shame in that. There was shame, and he knew it. That was the moment I realized something crucial. He wasn't trying to win arguments. He was trying to win authority. If he could convince me, and everyone else, that I was unstable, then every decision would default to him. Money. Choices. Freedom. I started pulling away emotionally, retreating into myself. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe, wondering how someone could make you feel so small without ever raising their voice. But the cracks in his story were starting to show. One afternoon, a coworker noticed me staring at my phone, pale and shaking. Are you okay? She asked. I almost said yes, almost. Instead, the truth spilled out in fragments. The debt. The accounts. The way he spoke to me. She listened quietly, then said something that cut through the fog like a blade. That's not stress, she said. That's financial abuse. The word hit me hard. Abuse. I went home that night and looked it up. Every article. Every checklist. Every warning sign, and one by one, I checked every box. Control over finances. Isolation. Gaslighting. Blame shifting. By the time he walked through the door, my hands were steady. When he asked what I'd been doing, I looked him straight in the eye and said, research. He smiled, confident as ever. About what? I took a breath. About my options. For the first time since we'd married, his smile flickered just for a second, but it was enough. Speech balloon. Question for you. Have you ever been told you were too sensitive when you were actually being mistreated? How did you realize the truth? 4. Protection. That felt like a cage. After I said the word options, something shifted. Not dramatically. Not explosively, quietly. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He didn't demand explanations. He adjusted. That's what made it terrifying. The next few days, he was attentive in a way that felt rehearsed. He asked how my day was. He cooked dinner. He even apologized, sort of. I might have been a little dismissive before, he said one evening, setting a plate in front of me. I just want to protect us. Protect you. Protect. That word should have comforted me. Instead, it made my skin prickle because protection, in his world, came with rules. It started with small suggestions. Why don't you quit that second job? You're exhausted. Your friends stress you out. You always come home upset after seeing them. Let me handle the bills for now. You've got enough on your plate. Each sentence was wrapped in concern. Love. Care. If I hesitated, he sighed like I was rejecting help. I'm your husband, he said once. Let me take care of you. And slowly, so slowly I didn't notice it happening, I began to shrink my world. I stopped going out after work. I stopped answering messages right away. I stopped sharing details of my day because every detail became ammunition. If I mentioned a coworker, he questioned their intentions. If I mentioned my sister, he criticized her advice. If I mentioned my parents, he accused them of turning me against him. They don't respect our marriage, he said. They think they know better than me. They're putting ideas in your head. Soon, phone calls were monitored, not officially, but noticed. Who was that? What did she say? Why do you need to talk to them so much? I began stepping into other rooms to take calls. He noticed that too. One night, after I finished talking to my best friend, he stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You didn't tell her everything, did you? He asked. My heart raced. Tell her what? Our business, he said. Marriage problems should stay private. I nodded, even though I hadn't told her much at all, but the implication lingered. Privacy, or secrecy. He started framing isolation as loyalty. If you really trusted me, you wouldn't need outside opinions. If you loved me, you wouldn't listen to people who don't understand us. And the worst part, I almost believed him. There was a night I tried to push back. I miss my friends, I said quietly. I feel alone. He pulled me into a hug, held me tightly, and whispered, You're not alone. You have me. His arms felt like bars. Then came the finances. Again. He suggested I give him full access to my remaining accounts for simplicity. When I hesitated, his tone changed. I thought we were past this, he said, disappointment heavy in his voice. Why are you still holding back? I wanted to scream that I was holding on to myself. Instead, I said nothing. He began controlling information. Mail disappeared. Notifications were turned off. Statements went missing. When I asked about them, he waved it off. I handled it. Handled it like I was a task, not a partner. The final straw came at a family gathering. We were sitting around the table when his uncle asked how work was going for me. Before I could answer, my husband laughed. She's taking a step back, he said. Focusing on home. Less stress for her. I stared at him. That's not. I started. He squeezed my knee under the table hard. I went quiet. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried silently into a towel so he wouldn't hear. I didn't recognize myself anymore. The woman who once managed her own life, her own money, her own future, she was disappearing and he was erasing her with a smile. But something inside me refused to die completely. I remembered my coworkers' words, financial abuse. I remembered the lists and I realized something. Crucial. Isolation wasn't a side effect. It was the plan, because if I had no one else, I'd have nowhere to go. That night, while he slept, I sat on the floor with my phone and sent a single message to my sister. I need help. Please don't tell him. She replied almost instantly. I'm here. I pressed my forehead to the wall and breathed for the first time in months. He thought he had me contained. He was wrong. 5, the number that changed everything. I checked my credit score at 2 to 13 a.m. I know the exact time because I remember thinking how quiet the world felt, how strange it was that everything outside our bedroom window looked normal while my life was quietly collapsing. He was asleep beside me. One arm flung across the bed like he owned the space. Like he owned everything. I slid out from under the covers and took my phone into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I opened the app. I told myself I was just being cautious. Just double-checking. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The number stared back at me like an accusation. It was worse than before. Much worse. Late payments. High utilization. New accounts I didn't recognize. I scrolled, my vision blurring. There were loans in my name, personal loans. One of them nearly maxed out. A store credit line I'd never stepped foot in. Interest rates so high they felt predatory. I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. This wasn't reckless anymore. This was calculated destruction. I clicked into the account details, my chest tightening with every date, every amount. All of it had happened while I was being told I was overreacting. While I was being encouraged to relax. To trust. I sank down onto the bathroom floor, my back against the tub, the cold tile grounding me as panic threatened to take over. This wasn't just money, this was my future. My ability to rent an apartment. To get a car. To take out a loan. to leave, and suddenly I understood this wasn't about things. It was about trapping me. I confronted him the next morning, not emotionally. Not angrily, calmly. I laid my phone on the table, the screen open, the numbers impossible to ignore. Explain this, I said. He glanced at it, then looked back at me, annoyed, not ashamed. You checked again? He asked. I told you not to obsess. That's not an explanation. He leaned back in his chair. You're catastrophizing. The word hit me like a slap. These loans are in my name, I said. I didn't agree to this. He scoffed. It's paperwork. Technicalities. Technicalities don't destroy credit, I shot back for the first time. His voice hardened. You're acting like I did something to you, he said. Everything I've done is for us. I laughed then, a short, broken sound that surprised us both. For us? I repeated. Then why didn't you tell me? He stood up slowly, towering over me. Because you would have said no. Silence fell between us, and there it was, the truth. He hadn't told me because consent was inconvenient. You don't trust me, he continued, his tone icy now. And if you don't trust your husband, what kind of marriage is that? I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was angry. You don't get to sabotage my life and call it marriage, I said. He stared at me for a long moment, then smiled cold. Calculated. You're being dramatic, he said. Where would you even go? That question haunted me all day. Where would I go? I had little savings left. My credit was wrecked. My name was tied to debts I hadn't chosen. He knew that. That night, I called my sister. We spoke in whispers, like conspirators. She didn't interrupt. Didn't minimize. Didn't question my memory. She believed me. You need to talk to a lawyer, she said. And you need to protect yourself. Now. The word lawyer made my stomach flip. It felt extreme, but then again, so did what he'd done. The next morning, while he was at work, I took a deep breath and did something he never expected. I made an appointment. I printed statements. Took screenshots. Saved emails. Documented everything. For the first time in months, I felt purposeful. When he came home that evening, he noticed. You seem different, he said, watching me closely. I am, I replied. He narrowed his eyes. What did you do today? I met his gaze. I took responsibility for my future. His jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. Maybe, but for the first time, the fear wasn't paralyzing. It was clarifying, because I finally understood something. The damage was real. The control was intentional. And love does not look like financial ruin. Speech balloon question for you. If someone destroyed your credit but claimed it was for your future, would you believe them? 6. When everyone took his side, I thought the hardest part would be standing up to him. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing how many people were willing to excuse what he'd done. As long as it didn't happen to them. It started the week after I met with the lawyer. I hadn't told him yet. I was careful, quiet, strategic. I moved like someone planning an escape while pretending everything was normal, but he knew something was off. They always do. One evening, his mother called again. Her voice was warm, familiar, almost comforting. We need to talk, she said. When I arrived at her house, his sister was there too. Sitting together. Waiting. It wasn't a conversation. It was an intervention. They told me I was stressed. That marriage was hard. That money caused fights in every relationship. You're being too rigid, his sister said. He's providing for you, his mother added. You should be grateful he's willing to take responsibility. I sat there, stunned. He opened loans in my name, I said quietly. Without telling me. His mother waved her hand. That's just paperwork. You're married. There it was again. Married. As if that single word erased consent. As if vows signed away autonomy. When I mentioned the lawyer, the room went cold. You did what? His sister snapped. His mother leaned forward, her smile gone. You're trying to ruin him. I felt my chest tighten. I'm trying to protect myself. She shook her head slowly. A wife doesn't do this. A wife, not a woman. Not a person. A role. I left shaking. That night, he was waiting for me in the living room, sitting in the dark. You went to my mother's, he said. Not a question. They're worried about you, he continued. About us. I said nothing. He stood up. You embarrassed me. I laughed then, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. You ruined my credit, I said. And you're worried about embarrassment? His face hardened. You're turning everyone against me, he said. If this goes any further, you're going to regret it. That was the first time he sounded threatening, not loud, certain. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, my lawyer confirmed what I already suspected. This was bigger than I thought. Financial abuse cases were complex, messy, emotionally brutal, but you're not wrong, she said firmly. And you're not crazy. Those words nearly broke me because for months, I'd been told the opposite. I began quietly separating what little I could. Documents, clothes, personal items. One afternoon, as I packed a small bag, he watched from the doorway. You think you're leaving, he said softly. I know I am. He smiled, a slow, confident smile. You won't get far. He was wrong again, because what he underestimated was this: I was done asking permission. The final moment came when a letter arrived from the bank, legal language, formal tone, consequences spelled out clearly. He read it. His hands tightened. This is serious, he said. Yes, I replied. It is. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes, not fear of losing me, fear of losing control, and that was when I knew I'd already won. If you've watched this story and felt something twist in your chest, if you've ever been told love means surrendering your independence, if someone used marriage, family, or good intentions to control you, backhand index pointing down, tell your story in the comments. Your words might be the reason someone else finds the courage to leave. Thumbs up, like this video if you believe marriage means partnership, not ownership. Bell, subscribe for the next story, because silence protects abusers, and stories expose them. And remember this: what's yours is not theirs, no matter what vows were spoken.